In this lecture, we're going to finish up enhancing our event bus to support the different channels per owner, where now when we gather supplies, we will properly track them per owner. Let's go. Let's start in the supplies class in VS Code. On awake and on destroy, we have these event bus listeners. Let's go ahead and uncomment those. Now, it may be tempting to just do what we did in the previous lecture by just listening for owner player 1. But if we consider that we may want to play against an AI or some other player, we really need this to be able to support listening for all of the owners. And that means that our supplies here also need some kind of a change because it's only tracking individual ints for minerals, gas, population, and population limit. And now we need to track these per owner. So much like the event bus, we can update these public static ints to public static dictionaries of type owner to int. And we'll repeat that for minerals, gas, population, and population limit. Convert all of these ints to dictionaries of type owner to int. Then let's scroll down to awake. And for each one of these, we want to initialize the dictionary and add in a value for each enumeration option. So on awake, we can do minerals equals a new dictionary of type owner to int. And we're going to want to do that for each one of these dictionaries. So we can duplicate this line and do population limit, population, and gas as well. And then exactly like what we did on the event bus, to register all and unregister all, we can do for each owner in enum.getValues type of owner. Then do minerals.add owner, and then give it a default value of 0. Gas.add, again, the owner, and 0. Population and population limit, the exact same thing. Once we've initialized all of these dictionaries with all of the owner values, we can do bus of type supply event dot register for all handle supply event. And then on destroy, instead of just unregistering the one, we do bus of type supply event unregister for all handle supply event. But now our handle supply event doesn't quite work right because we're going to update our minerals and set the UI text, but minerals is now a dictionary. So we're going to need to know from the supply event who the owner of this event is. So it's not enough just for us to get the event on that channel. We also need to be told who the owner is. So let's come over to the supply event and just add that to the struct. We can do public owner with a public get and a private set. And then whenever we have the constructor here, we always need to know this owner. So let's just do owner for the first parameter, and then assign capital owner to the lowercase owner. Then over here in handle supply event, we can do minerals keyed by evt.owner, and the same on the gas keyed by evt owner, increment that amount. But now we still have the problem of updating the text. We don't want to update the text if anybody has a supply event. We only want it if the player 1 has their stuff updated. So we can do if owner.player1 equals evt owner, and then minerals text set text minerals to string. And do the same thing on the gas. Just wrap that gas text set text with if owner.player1 is equal to the evt owner. And we can't just set the text of minerals text and gas text to minerals.toString. We have to make sure that we do minerals keyed by evt.owner toString and gas keyed by evt.owner toString as well. And now, because we've changed the signature of the constructor of supply event, our worker is now broken. So let's come over to worker, and we can see right here, handle gather supplies is broken because we have the new supply event. Let's just give that supply event the current owner. And we can see we have a couple other little compile errors. Let's scroll up to the next one. Right up here, yep, whenever we're canceling that building, we're creating a new supply event. Let's just provide the owner here for both the minerals and the gas. And there's one more right up here where we're building. We're raising 2 supply events, one for the mineral, one for the gas. Just provide the owner as the first argument in both of those. But remember, that's not the only place we raise supply events. Over here on the base building, whenever we're building a unit, we also raise a supply event. Luckily, the base building already has an owner, so we can just raise the supply events providing owner for the first argument again. And looks like down here with cancel building unit, we need to do that as well. Unfortunately, that's still not all to make supplies work right. I told you this was a little bit more complicated than the last one. Let's come over to the build unit command. The build unit command has us check if we have enough supplies, and that's checking if the unit cost minerals is less than or equal to supplies.minerals, but we've changed this type. It's not an int anymore, it's now a dictionary. And we don't see a way right here to tell who is the owner. And while we could try to hard code this, then if we made AI later, it wouldn't be able to reuse this and we need some totally different way for the AI to play the game. Or if we had multiple players, the same problem would happen. So we really need some way for this has enough supplies to be able to tell which supplies to look at. And I think the most reasonable way to do that is in the command context, because that's some additional context we need to execute the commands. That makes a lot of sense to go here. And that's going to be this lecture's challenge. Update the command context to support an owner. If no owner is provided, assume owner player 1. Then update the build unit command and the build building command to check the supplies for the current owner. So pause the video, make these updates to the command context and to our build building command and our build unit command, and I'll see you back here in a few minutes. All right, welcome back. I hope you're able to do this one. If you were, that means you definitely have a really firm grasp of how these commands work and how this ownership concept is working. In this struct command context, let's just add that public owner with a public get and a private set. Now, the way that you can add in an additional parameter here is we could add in a new optional parameter to this command context, like how we have the unit index defaulting to 0, the mouse button defaulting to left. We could add the owner as well. I don't love that because the owner is a pretty important and prominent component to this. You could do that and it would be totally fine. My preference would be to, in this case, default owner to owner player 1 and to create an overload for this constructor where the first parameter is the owner. And on the second one, we would just assign the capital owner to the lowercase owner instead of defaulting to owner player 1. This means that we don't have to make any additional changes to our current code, and we have a very convenient way in the future, if we need to provide a different owner, to do that, and it's prominently displayed in the constructor's signature. If you did just add a new optional owner parameter, that also totally works fine. You may have done something like this on top with owner equals owner.player1, and just assign the owner here. That's also totally functional, totally works. I just prefer this method because it gives us a much cleaner API, in my opinion, for the command context to prominently display the owner. Let's come over to the build unit command. Now, in has enough supplies, we need to accept the command context. This becomes too long, so I'm going to move it down into a no longer expression bodied function and return the unit.cost.minerals is less than or equal to supplies.minerals keyed by context.owner, and at the end, supplies.gas keyed by context.owner. In all three places where we call has enough supplies, we want to just provide that command context. Then we're going to come over to the build building command and do the exact same thing. Convert that has enough supplies into a standard function, add in the command context parameter, and key supplies.minerals by context.owner and supplies.gas key that by context.owner, then add in that return statement, and then just do a little cleanup to make this all fit on one screen. Then looks like we have a few places to call has enough supplies. We'll just provide the context in all of these places, starting on can handle, then in handle, then in is locked. And that's all we were looking for in this challenge. With that complete, if we come back to Unity and click play, we would expect that when we gather, our UI is still updating because we're getting those player 1 events. Awesome, we see the minerals update, we're going to see the gas update, great. However, there's a small problem. We introduced a bug in a previous lecture. If we deselect all the units, we start getting spammed with some errors. Argument out of range exception, specified argument was out of the range of valid values. And this is happening on our Actions UI. So if we open that up, we see in Actions UI here at line 32, selected units element at 0. Well, it's possible that we don't have any units selected. And when we are handling supply change from the runtime UI, we are enabling Actions UI for our selected units. Selected units is an empty hash set. We're calling refresh buttons, and we're trying to pick the first one, and this ends up being null. So let's convert this refresh buttons to say available commands equals selected units.count is greater than 0, question mark, doing a ternary operator here, selected units.element at 0 available commands, just like what was happening before. As long as we have more than 0 units, we're going to do that. Otherwise, that's colon, array.empty of type base command. Then, because this is a super long line, let's break it up into multiple lines. Then we'll still go through all this stuff as normal, but we're going to end up skipping this bit because we have no commands. Then we'll enable or disable all of those relevant action buttons. So let's come back to Unity, click play one more time, and we would expect that we don't get spammed with errors when we have no units selected. Let's select a bunch of workers, tell them all to go gather, and then deselect them. And perfect, our minerals are updating, and we're not getting spammed with errors. That's all we have for this lecture. We've now fully refactored our event bus to support raising and receiving events on different event channels based on the owner of the event. We now have no regression functionality. We even have improvements like our units no longer try to kill each other. When you're ready to move on from here, I'll see you on the next lecture.